All right, welcome to the second section of Section 5. Aren't you excited? You get to hear me even though I'm not there. This is great. We're going to continue on with Section 5 today, talking about fossil fuels. Yesterday we talked about their formation of fossil fuels. Remember, we get our fossil fuels from uh, swamps for coal and microscopic plankton, microscopic plants and animals for our oil and gas. Where do we not get it from? That's right, the dinosaurs. Not from the dinosaurs. Oil and gas were being produced, and coal were being produced long before the dinosaurs came around. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to finish up your diagrams that you've been assigned, and now you're on to the second part here. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and flip to that third page. We're going to go on and talk about the different resources, coal, petroleum, and natural gas individually. We'll start off with coal. The reason we're starting off with coal, one, we've already talked about it. We're familiar with the mining process, and that's actually, a major part of this, but also the fact is there's just a lot more coal, okay? The coal has the largest deposits of the fossil fuels. Found in many different places compared to the oil and gas. The coal is also something interesting. We didn't talk about this yet, but there are several types. On your paper, I'm going to move to the next screen. I'll go back in a minute. Don't worry about it. Okay. On your paper, you have this diagram, and you can see that there are different types of coal, and they vary depending on how deep they are buried, and how much energy we get out of them also. Okay. The bituminous coal, sorry, that's sort of hard to say, isn't it? That seems to be the best for energy production. Okay, so that's what we'd be looking for. You can make coal. Some of us have talked about that. Coal can be made in a laboratory out of peanut butter, if you want to take a look at that video, or by other processes. They can even make it out of fermenting byproducts. Okay, but the thing is, we're not sure how efficient it is. How much energy do you need to make the coal? And a large scale, it's not ready. You just can't do it yet. Okay. The nice thing is about coal, not only do we have the most of it, but we don't need to do a lot of it to use it. So when we say it needs a little refining, it doesn't take much to make it usable for us to get into production. Okay. Does anybody remember how much of our energy is or comes from coal? Think about it for a moment. Take a look at your notes, and yep, that's right. It's almost half. Okay, it's the cheapest too. So coal we like it because it just makes sense. Right. Now, there are some issues that come with coal. Of course, we've talked about some of them already. Okay, go in there. The nice thing is, the coal that we find underground they cause fewer pollutants, so less air pollution. We talked about that, the dust coming from there, and all the noise and other things like that. But also, because they're below ground, they're less likely to cause that acid mine drainage, so less likely to have water contamination, make our water bad. Okay. But another issue we may have with coal, or do have with coal, is once we do use it, what happens? Because coal just doesn't disappear. We are left behind with ash. Okay, what do we do with the ash? It can cause pollution as well. Same reason. So we need to find a place to store it so it doesn't contaminate our water and doesn't cause any problems for us there. So that's another storage issue, is part of that money, time, space that we need to look into. The cool thing is that there is something called clean coal. Interesting, huh? Clean coal. What does that mean? Well, if you'd like, there is a quick video on your table, on your lesson, sorry, where it's called Clean Coal. The Discovery Channel put that out, so take a few moments to look at that. Really informative. It says, why is clean coal a myth? Because it's actually, although we call it clean, and one of the reasons we call it clean is because we literally clean it with water, get all that sulfur off before using it. But we call it clean there because there's less pollutants. However, once we burn it, it does the same thing. There's nothing that's stopping that CO2 from coming off of it. So some people say clean coal is a myth because there's still that greenhouse gas coming off. Okay, so that's still an issue for coal. Right. If you have any questions, be sure to write them down. We'll address them when I get back. Okay. We're going to go ahead and talk about petroleum next. Okay. So number 2, petroleum. We've used this word before. Some of you say oil, right? And matter of fact, it's also known as crude oil. That's something we use. In Britain, they say petrol, instead of gasoline. Petroleum. That's where it comes from. Okay. Where do we find petroleum? Like we said, it's made from tiny marine organisms that have been buried underground. So you're going to find it in places where you can access these in what we call faults and folds. Okay, so this is a fold, one type of fold. You see that curve there, like it's been folded up, and there's some oil there, and you can see the little breaks up by top. Here's a fault line. Maybe we can access that because it's been moved around by the Earth's movements. Okay, now oil and gas can either be trapped inside rock, or they can migrate and have basically almost lakes trapped underground, or it can move to the surface at times. Now we don't have that happen very often anymore because obviously we've trapped that. We're using that for money. But if you've ever seen the opening to the Beverly Hillbillies, you know that Jeb here goes hunting for his breakfast and he accidentally shoots the ground and oil comes up and he becomes a millionaire. That's the story, and that actually can happen. Okay, if you want to take a chance to look at that video, it is pretty funny. Beverly Hillbillies are good there. Okay, great show. So where do we find our oil? Think about that. Let's take a look. Where do we find it? On our map. You can see the darkest areas here. And we talked about yesterday, when we think petroleum, we think Middle East. Now, we don't get most of our petroleum from the Middle East. Again, we get it right here in the U.S. 60% comes from the U.S. itself. But the largest deposits, the area where it's most common, is the Middle East. Okay. Now, as you can see from the map, there are large deposits in U.S., Venezuela, Canada, the North Sea. Okay. Over here, Siberia, of course, part of Russia, Nigeria, them there. Okay, so that'll be part of it. Okay. We find our oil wells. They can be done on land or on sea, and there's 2 pictures here. You have this picture in your paper. Okay, it shows you all the pieces of an oil rig. Now that's the first setup. They're getting it then when they're drilling it. Okay, once it's been drilled, then we have what we call that. I don't know. We call them rocking horses in my family. That once they help pump it out of the ground and store it once the drill has been created. In the sea, there are several different types of drills or of platforms depending on what depth you are for looking for those. There's again another quick video on your lesson for the day. There's how do we do oil wells. It's not the most exciting. He's a little dry, but it's really informative. It shows you how they do it by a boat. So you might want to check that out. It is pretty fun. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. We know this, burning oils and gas, they release pollutants, carbon dioxide into the air. That's one of our major issues. And then we all know that one of the biggest concerns with oil itself is oil spills. Okay, they're a large concern for our environment. They're especially problematic in the ocean, deep sea, right? And here's some pictures from the 2010 Gulf of Mexico oil spill. Okay, luckily they've done a great job of getting that cleaned up, considering how long that leak was for. That was just, I know you guys were younger, but that was horrible. Okay, would not remember this. I barely remember this, but in 1989 there was an oil spill up in Alaska, and Arctic climates can also be a problem with oil spills because they're really hard to clean up when it's really cold outside. Okay, so those are some things we're concerned about when we talk about oil. Okay. If you have any questions about petroleum, let me know. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the natural gas, last part of our section 3 there. Okay. So natural gas, what is it? Well, when we say natural gas, we really mean methane gas. Okay, CH4. So we have a carbon, one carbon atom, and 4 hydrogen atoms around it. Okay, trapped in gas. Now we've had this around for a very long time, and actually they used to just burn it because it'd come up with the oil and they wanted the oil, but they didn't really have a way to get hold of the natural gas, so they just let it burn. Okay, now technology has allowed companies to transport it, to store it, and let us use it, and now we can use it to heat our homes and that sort of thing. Okay. The cool thing about natural gas is that there's actually less pollutants with this. It's better that way. However, methane is a greenhouse gas. Okay, it's over 25%. What? Over 25 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. In other words, it traps heat 25 times better, and that's a low estimate. 25 is a low estimate, than carbon dioxide. Now we say there's less pollutants, but methane isn't healthy for you to begin with. Okay, we had somebody putting a neighbor of ours was building their house just down the road from us, and they were using natural gas, and they were doing some digging around the house, and they hit a pocket of gas that wasn't there, so they actually had to evacuate my neighborhood, which is like 5 houses in the country, but they had to evacuate us when I was in high school because of this gas that they hit. Now, luckily, my family was on vacation at the time, so we didn't even have any idea that anything was happening, but it did affect our neighbors. They had to be out of their homes for 3 days. And that's nothing compared to what happened in California in the fall. There was that methane gas, and I hope you guys are aware of this happening. There was a gas leak that was running for months, and actually is sort of still running. They're trying to figure out how to get this to stop, but they've diverted it a little bit for that, and it has been making people sick. Okay. So that's natural gas for you. If you have any questions, again, let me know. We're going to stop there, and we're going to move on to the second video when you've got a chance. Okay? So we're going to go to the other uses of fossil fuel and what we see for the future in a moment. All right.